This week, we are joined by one of the University of Maryland's newest head coaches, Karn. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So let's kind of start with, I guess, the most pressing thing. Obviously, you've been on the Maryland job now for a couple weeks in season, but let's go back to when you took the job in the summer. What kind of led to that, and why did you decide to leave Oakland?
Yeah, so there were both personal and professional reasons for making the move. We'll start with the professional ones. Having the opportunity to coach in the Big Ten at a school like Maryland is really special. It's something that I think softball specifically, like the coaching group in the Big Ten is amazing, really supportive, and just a group of really strong women who are fighting for all the right things while competing for championships and World Series and all of that good stuff. So being able to just compete in the arena more often with coaches like that is awesome. Coming to the University of Maryland has been really special. So through the interview process, I found out that really everybody here, so like our administration, our support staff, other coaches, the student athletes, the Maryland pride that everybody has is really special, and you feel it as soon as you talk to them. And then the support that they have for each other within the department is amazing. And so all of those things came through in the interview process, and I thought this is somewhere where I could really see myself fitting in really well, doing really well, having the resources that I need to compete at a really high level. And then personally, my husband and I slowly moved further and further west in our careers from both of our families. And we started our family in Michigan. And so we have a soon to be 4 and 2-year-old. And our goal since having them was to always get a little bit closer to home so they could just spend more time with their grandparents. Because sadly, we don't have enough time with our grandparents. So when this opportunity came, it was kind of like a no-brainer. I'm going to go for it, give it everything I got, and then from there, see where everything falls.
Do you remember what your reaction was and how you found out you got the job?
Yes. I received a phone call from Damon and didn't know which way it was going to go, but I knew a phone call was coming at some point in that week. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, like I can't believe this. Like what a dream come true for me. And I just started crying on the phone. I was just really excited and excited to call my husband, which then turned into a lot of other emotions, like us both leaving programs that we had built, but just like excited tears, and then just like really excited to tell my family, who I didn't let them all know about the interview process. So like my parents didn't even know that I was going through the process, because I didn't want them to be let down just in case it didn't work out. So it was really cool to be able to surprise them also.
What has the transition kind of been like going from a smaller Midwest school to now a massive Big Ten program here at Maryland? What's some of the challenges you might have seen, and maybe what's kind of easier?
I'll start with the easier piece, and we just have more resources here. We have more people in place to do a lot of things that take that off of my plate. So it allows me to coach a little bit more than maybe I had the space to do at Oakland, because I was just wearing a couple more hats at Oakland. But overall, like for me, it's about the people and taking care of our team, taking care of our girls. And I don't feel any differently about that, moving from, a smaller program to a bigger program. So all of that has felt the same. And I would say the biggest challenge is just getting the team to live in the space that I hope that they can live and compete in, which is just a really positive, supportive atmosphere. And we're still adjusting to that.
If we can kind of take it back to, I guess, 2008, when you finished your playing career, what kind of went into wanting to become assistant coach, or like, was that something you always wanted to do? Kind of take us through the process of, your mind and when you went into coaching.
Yeah. So it was, I went into school wanting to be a math teacher. And so as a math education major, I quickly found out I didn't want to go that route. I didn't want to be a teacher. And it was one of those things where everybody told me growing up, I'd be a great teacher. You'd be a great teacher. So I'm like, okay, I guess I should be a teacher. And then I thought, I really enjoy writing. I really enjoy journalism. So I decided to change my major to English, with a specialty in journalism. And um, at that point in time, the coach that I graduated with had been hired, and she was just a little bit more open about like the coaching profession and what she was doing, and that it could be full time, and it had been her career. And I thought, what? You can do coaching like as a full-time job? I that had never really crossed my mind before. And so through talking to her, I thought that is something that I'm really interested in. If not, I really like sports journalism, so I'll figure that out. And so I just kind of, after playing, thought, if I'm going to do it, I need to try to do it right now. See if I like it, see how it goes. And then I just never stopped.
Kind of taking it back even a little bit further, we've talked about your coaching, but what we haven't talked about yet is your playing career. Kind of what I've seen so far is that you were kind of a star at St. Joseph's. For the listeners, she threw one of only 2 perfect games in program history. I guess can you kind of describe that game, how that was going on? I believe that was against Lafayette, if I'm correct.
You might be right. I don't remember. And I still am not, but was not somebody who was like really big on stats. I never looked at my stats. I never really paid attention to the records. Our SID would kind of let our coaches know when we would be close. But I think the more that I would think about those things, because it happened in high school too, it was like I was just waiting for it to be over to then just be able to play. And so I never really wanted to know those things. So in that game, I knew I was close. I remember knowing I was close, but I didn't know what strikeout was going to be. And so I did have a very good playing career. But I think it was like the things that I remember most of my playing career aren't those moments. It's more like I remember being at the A10 championships and I wasn't playing my best, but there was a pitcher under me younger than me, who was doing much better than I was. And so, like, I remember having meetings with my team about rallying around each other and getting each other to try to win the championship and not necessarily focus on like what I was doing personally.
I want to go back to what you just said about kind of statistics and knowing that. Is that something you still kind of believe as a coach now? Or is that just kind of as a player, the mental side of it?
It is something that I don't really think about as a coach too. Like I look at the stats because we have to do some looking at that stuff just to make sure we're putting ourselves in the best possible position to win games. But I am not really like, I'm not focused on the stats. I go a lot off of feel. I go a lot off of like the way the game is moving and what we think would be a better matchup based on who we think we're going to be facing. So while I look at the stats, I'm not looking at them in depth. I'm not over analyzing them. I'm not talking to the players about them. And I know last night after the game, one of the reporters asked a question about the second pitcher for UVA who had a low ERA and one of the second lowest in the country, I think he said, which I did not know that at the time. Because that's not my focus. My focus is what pitches does she throw and how can we hit them? That's all.
In a sport like softball and baseball, stats, and not just like your typical ERA stats, but, it's blossomed into stuff like spin rate and, making an exit velocity and stuff like that. How do you ever feel like worried that you're missing out on like crucial data or anything like that? Because there are a lot of coaches, I think, who are of your mindset of like, I can't pay attention to all it. And then there are some like new school coaches that's a lot of what they rely on, the analytics, that type. How do you balance in? Do you ever think like, oh, maybe I need to be paying more attention?
So when I say stats, I mean like the record breaking things and like what you would see, like
Gotcha.
what anybody would be able to Google, but we're using the analytics. Like we have
Okay.
the spray check. We're doing all of those things. So I think it's more about like, for me, the analytics side is more what's happening in the moment and what's real. And the stats, like the stats that like our girls might look at, they're just looking at their batting average and not digging deeper into their on-base percentage or their quality at bat percentage. And so to me, those stats don't tell the whole story. So I don't focus on them. Like if somebody has the second best ERA in the country, that is amazing for that person. And obviously she's doing a great job for her team, but we still have to find a way to hit it. And so just not really like bogging myself, my staff, or my team down with some of those things that are, I guess, what you would call flashy, and staying focused on the things that can help us be productive.
So I got a hypothetical scenario for you just to kind of
Okay.
get inside the mind of Coach Karn. So say it's like, the sixth inning in a 2-1 game that you guys are winning, and your starter's been, Courtney Weiss has been in the game, but is at a really high pitch count, and there's a runner on first, and the analytics say that this lefty hits righties really, really well, but struggles against like left-handers or left throwers. So I don't know what's the pronunciation.
Yeah, left-handed pitchers. Yep.
Okay. Are you going to the bullpen? Are you taking that all into account? Or are you just seeing like, hey, she's pitched really, really well this game, I'm going to let her finish this inning? I think that's super interesting to kind of get inside the mind.
I'm going off of feel there. I'm going off of how that person had at bats against her earlier in the game, what they looked like, and I'm trusting Courtney in that moment.
Right.
And so now it would be different if in the inning before she had given up 3, even if it was a 1-2-3 inning, but it was like line out, deep fly ball. Then I'm like, okay, maybe she's starting to flatten out. So like that is telling me that she isn't throwing her best stuff. So it really, I'm not going to lean on analytics too much there. I'm going to trust my gut on that one. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong.
Yeah. Tampa Bay Rays fans probably wish that you were her manager, or the manager. So. I want to ask about when you got to College Park. What was your reactions when you first got like to the campus about finding some of the players who stood out, and what did you learn about the previous situation when you got here?
Yeah. So I just found out that our team is capable, the current players are capable of having a lot of success. They had to learn how to fail and learn from a failure. They had to learn how to be okay making mistakes, and not be embarrassed or upset by it. And we are really working to create that space. And I think we're finally getting as close to that space as we might be able to get to. But that was probably the biggest thing for me, is like, okay, allow them to make mistakes, get them comfortable making mistakes, so then they can go out and just play as hard as they can. And if they make a mistake there, then they know it's okay. Because we were being really safe, I guess you could say, and not wanting to be aggressive in making our outs, getting lead runners out, attempting to get lead runners out, and, not swinging early in counts or check swinging because we're second guessing ourselves. And so getting them comfortable in just like going all out at 100%, and then just, let the chips fall where they may from there. But don't go down without giving it everything. So that was the biggest thing. And then a couple of people who stood out, who I think very easily stand out, even if you come to our games, are people like Courtney and Diamond, and Jada and Meg. And then the people that I think have really stepped their game up recently, are people like Sammy and Mick and Maisie. And then Delaney behind the plate is doing a really good job for us. And that wasn't necessarily a role that she came in expecting. So a lot of people are kind of shining bright in the right moments.
By the time this episode comes out, I'm pretty sure you guys will have already started Big Ten play. So kind of give us a look at how you think you're going to fare in Big Ten play. I know you played, I think, like 20 games so far in the season at the time of this recording. So just kind of how are you generally feeling going into the Big Ten? And, you mentioned coming to a Big Ten school, something super exciting for you. So
yeah, I think we're at the right spot, and going into playing our best softball going into Big Ten play. And that's what we've talked about. Like before any game started, we talked about what we do in this, preseason training sets us up for preseason. What we do in this pre-conference series of games sets us up for conference. And then that's where we've already ironed out all of our stuff. We've figured out what our best combinations are offensively and defensively. And then we're just rolling through Big Ten and we're feeling good and we're playing good. And we're getting there. I think after this weekend, it's going to be a good opportunity for more people to just get more at bats, figure out their adjustments, more pitchers to get innings, and then feel good going into Big Ten. So where we will fall, I'm not sure. But what I do know is we're getting to the point where we're going to compete. And then we are also now believing that we can come back late in games, which is huge for us.
I know it's kind of affected a bunch of other sports, but how have you seen the NCAA's stance and the new stance on the transfer portal kind of affect softball?
I think it's kind of gone the same across the board, like for college athletics. Every coach that I talk to in different sports at different schools, they're all kind of saying the same thing. And now with, including NIL, with the transfer portal, I think it's a new age of college athletics, and we have to learn to adapt, and we have to try to recruit student athletes who want to be at Maryland for very specific reasons to be able to retain them. Because if they do really well, they might have other opportunities, and that's just kind of the facts of the world right now.
Yeah, so I know Jada McFarland, covering it last year, had some options from different teams.
Mm-hmm.
Was it almost like you had to re-recruit her because you're a new coach and she has these different offers and stuff like that? How do you go about recruiting players on your own team? And I'm assuming that you probably had to do that at Oakland too, where bigger schools might come and try to poach them from your roster. And did you ever have a player just leave and there's nothing we can do?
I haven't experienced that yet. And Jada, I think, had made her decision prior to my arrival because I had arrived so late. And I feel really strongly that in order to set student athletes up for success, you have to allow them to be where they want to be. And so if somebody really wants to be somewhere else, then I'm going to have to allow them to do that. And then my next move is, how do we replace that? Instead of kind of wallowing in what could have or should have been. I can't control those things. But my goal is to create an environment where they want to stay. They want to get this degree. They value what we're doing here. They value the space that they're playing in and the level of success that they can have over maybe some other things. And from there, I can't control everything.
One thing you can't control either is the replay review system. I did I was kind of interested because I remember last year they played non-conference games and there would be review, and then they'd come home into one of the biggest conferences in the country and there'd be no review. What do you know about the replay system? What do you think about it? Because I know the previous coach was not happy necessarily with how things went down in the Big Ten.
I mean, I think there are pros and cons to everything, especially when something changes within the sport. I think it's been pretty good. They've allowed more things to be reviewable, and I think that helps the game. I think the fact that there's a limit on our reviews and we don't get them back like football also helps. But it changes the game because you're taking the human piece out of it, and we're relying on technology, robots, all of those things. And then the fact that we don't have it at home, I think it's just eventually we're all going to have it. And so worrying about what we don't have right now, we can't do that because the team, whether we have it or not, wherever we're playing, our opponent has the same opportunity to either use it or not use it. So to me, it's just kind of it depends on where you're playing, but I do think it's good for the game.
An interesting tidbit that I read about you is that while at Oakland, you started to let pitchers and catchers call their own game. Is that a normal thing? And is that something you brought here? And then how did you kind of make that decision to allow them to do that?
Yeah. So I guess it depends on how you define normal. For me, I think that's the best flow of the game. I think the pitchers and catchers should be in sync with each other, and they see things differently, obviously, as a battery than I can see from the sideline. I can get information, gather information, but I can't see everything. And so at Oakland, our pitcher and catcher had a really special bond. And it was right after we had been practicing our catcher calling the game within scrimmages, in fall ball, and in bullpens. And so I think I had COVID. And so I was out for a weekend series, and I was like, you're going to take it, go for it. And so she did a great job, which I was not surprised by because it's something we had been practicing over and over again. Then I came back and we were kind of going back and forth between me calling and her calling. And the pitchers just really liked the flow of the game. They felt like they were a lot more focused on the field of play instead of taking their eyes off of the field of play for signals. They liked the flow of the game better. So we stuck with that. And she's been calling pitches ever since there. Here, so Delaney did call pitches in the fall. And it's something that I would like to get to because, again, I feel like the flow of the game is just so much better. I think it's just more like they are in control of what they're doing. And ultimately, that's what I want them to do, is be in control of what they're doing, be an active participant in both their success and their failure so they can get better from both of those things, and not have it be like, okay, my coach told me to throw a curveball, so I have to throw a curveball right here. I talk a lot about like throwing into windows and the top of the window and the bottom of the window and in and out of the zone and competitive pitches. And I think that just takes time to learn. There's a learning curve to that. So eventually I would like to get to that spot, but I think it's all about personnel. And I know specifically Courtney, the way she gets her timing on the mound, she likes to look in, get her signal, look back out. Because we also toyed with, I give the catcher the signal and the catcher relays it to the pitcher, but she likes the flow better when she's looking in. So it's all kind of personal preference.
Is that something you had been thinking about? Like, do you think that ever would have happened in your coaching career if you hadn't got COVID, or would you ever have got to that point? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Because we had been practicing it. We've been working on it. And it was specifically that catcher, a goal of hers as a freshman. So as a freshman, she didn't call the game, but from sophomore year on, she did. And it had been a goal of hers, and she studied it and really came back as a sophomore, just like, I'm ready to do this. Let me do this. I got this. So it was kind of like one of her goals. And I was like, well, let's do it. And now I've realized it makes the flow of the game a lot better.
You mentioned earlier how I think you said your husband also left a program. What was he up to before kind of moved to East Coast, and what's he up to now?
Yeah, so he was a college baseball coach. He was a head coach in the NAIA at Madonna University, and he had just come off of a conference championship and back-to-back appearances in the regional. So he's had a lot of success in his career. He's also the pitching coordinator for the USPBL, which is an independent professional baseball league in the summer in Michigan. And right now he's stay-at-home dad, taking care of the kids. And so that's been a really big adjustment because he went from preparing for his team to return and hopefully win a championship to, we have to leave. And that has been a big adjustment for our family because he's a baseball guy through and through.
Right on. Is your kind of conversations at home, you guys talk a lot about baseball and softball, or kind of something you, obviously it's something you guys definitely have in common, but is it, you guys talk about that a lot, or is it something you kind of just leave at work?
Combination. It depends on what's going on. Like randomly he'll be watching our games, then I'll come home and be like, what were you doing there? Or like, this kid looks like she's doing X, Y, and Z. And like, what are you guys working on? He's really good at his job. So anytime he sees something, I'm like, oh, I didn't look at it that way, so I'm going to take it into the office the next day. And for me, like when he was coaching last year, which I'm hoping he gets another opportunity to do that on the East Coast, it was like, I feel like I helped him a little bit more in the how to change his mindset when he's like approaching a situation with his team compared to like helping him with baseball things.
Right on. Well, those are all the questions I had. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.